Hello, and thank you for joining us on another Ceasefire Moment.
If we look at the first few verses, a few things pop out at us. We know that Jesus is speaking. What we may not notice is that he is speaking to disciples. There's two words used for disciple. There's a noun, which means the person, and there's a verb, which means doing. The noun version would be like saying a teacher. The verb version is like saying teaching. So a teacher is teaching. The verb version is used in Matthew 28. You can look at our video on that. It's a verb. When it says to go, it doesn't say go and make disciples. It says go and disciple. So in other words, go and teach. This particular one is disciple, which means the noun. In Hebrew, it's a student who learns from his teacher and desires to follow his example. He's not teaching to the multitudes. He's teaching to the disciples. He went up to the mount, sat down, and his disciples came to him. An interesting thing about when you look at the mount, these are direct words taken from the Hebrew scriptures whenever Moses went up on the mount to get the tablets and the teaching and the Torah from God. When that's done by a Jewish writer or a Hebrew writer, they want you to recall as much as you can about that. So Matthew purposely wrote here, he went up on the mount. He's trying to make the connection between Jesus and Moses. When we're reading through Matthew 5, we see happy or blessed, depending on our translations. We need to discover what does actually blessed mean. The word translated as blessed did not carry with it an idea of a future event. So it wasn't like, if you do this, then you'll get blessed. It was a state of being in the moment. It wasn't something to be given at a later time or a reward for an action. It was an experience during the action. The Amplified says, happy to be envied and spiritually prosperous with life, joy and satisfaction in God's favor and salvation, regardless of their outward conditions. 150 years before Jesus, a Jewish teacher wrote a blessed is statement. Keep in mind, in Matthew 5, it's basically a Jewish audience. This statement fully immersed itself in the value of the world with status, admiration, etc. It was a culture where status was important, and then Jesus came along, and when they heard Jesus say blessed, they thought that they knew what he was going to say, but what he said was almost the opposite. So you can imagine what it was like to be one of them sitting there going, oh yeah, I know what? That's not what I thought. That's not what I've learned. That's not what I heard. That's not what the rabbi said. That's not what this Jewish teacher said. Just like as we continue, there are going to be moments when you're going to say, well, that's not what I've heard. That's not what so-and-so said. That's not what I thought that meant. Welcome to the journey of the disciples who were sitting on the mount listening to Jesus teach.
This concludes this episode of this Ceasefire Moment. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you learned something.